Welcome back to the Cash Flow Chronicles podcast. Today, I am joined by Rondi, a nationally recognized credit and debt expert who's helped clients wipe out millions in bad debt and rebuild elite level credit profiles. In today's episode, we're going to get tactical on three big areas: how to use smart debt to actually build long-term wealth, how to optimize and protect your personal credit, and how to shield what you've built from lawsuits, creditors, and overtaxation through better structure and planning. You guys are in for a treat. This story is insane. Let's get into it. Alrighty, Rondi, welcome to the show, man. Really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. And I know my listeners are really going to enjoy this episode. I know you got a lot of knowledge to share. So before we jump into everything and I run you through the list of questions I've got for you, I'd love just to have you tell everybody a little bit more about your background and how you ended up in this position that you were in, helping the amount of people that you're able to connect with these days.
Well, it's good to be alive. You know, every day I wake up, first thing I do in the morning is I try to figure out where I'm at. Am I in some hotel room because I'm at some city speaking at an event in front of business owners or entrepreneurs, or I'm at home? And so it's good to be alive. It's good to be here. How I got started with this is probably not very similar to most people in America. And the fact that until age 15, I grew up in a shack with no running water, no electricity. We got our food out of a dumpster. My parents were too proud for welfare and government assistance. So we went hungry a lot. And my stepdad was a convicted murderer, spent time in prison for literally stalking someone and murdering them, and then got out because he was schizophrenic with multiple personalities. And that came with challenges because the Paul was a nice, godly man. Peter, when it came out, was very violent and would beat us and torture us and kill animals in front of us and then force us to eat our pets and like just some really crazy stuff. And most of my childhood was in this shack or in a tent. We spent a lot of time running from the government. This was in the 80s when kids had to go to school and my parents didn't let me go to school. So the government would show up and we'd run and hide in the mountains, or he'd beat us up really bad, and then we'd go to school and then social services would find out. And so that was my childhood. I'm the oldest of 13. I got tired of it. And it really came down, Shawn, to one thing. It was one moment. My brother, my youngest brother, or closest age brother, is 10 months younger than me. So we were the same age, 2 months out of the year. Very close. And we had decided when I was 14, 15, and he was 13, 14, somewhere in there, that the next time he beat up one of us, the next one was going to hit him over the head with something and we were going to kill him. And that was our plan. And we had the whole thing laid out and it happened. We were up in Wenatchee, Washington, hiding from some agency here in Idaho. And my brother dropped an apple. We were up there picking apples for some money. And he dropped it, and he was like on a 10-foot ladder. And so Paul kicked the ladder out from under him, jumped on him. And so I started hitting Paul with my walking stick. I called it my walking stick. It was a freaking club is what it was. And, you know, I'm 15 years old. I'm 80 something pounds and scrawny. And, you know, he doesn't take long for him to get advantage of both of us. And so he gave my mom a choice. She could pick him and the security of the environment or us. And so she gave us $20 in food stamps and that was it. We left. So I bounced around through foster care and state. And I finally went to work at 16 for a guy named Wally Williams. And he was an entrepreneur, very successful. And he hired me to wash his cars, mow the lawn at his offices and his house, do errands for him and his wife, put gas in their cars, etc. Like. And then one day he came to me. I was a sophomore in high school, and he gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. And the offer was he would pay me $2,000 if I was willing to do something for him. And I'm a broke kid. I'm making $3 an hour minimum wage washing his cars. And this is 1986. So I was like, I'll do anything. I'll bury someone if you want me to. And he just looked at me like this weird look, like that is so inappropriate. He's like, all right, if you want to do it, I have this job for you. Come down this hallway. So we walked down this long hallway. We got to the end of the hallway and he turns around and he looks down at me because I'm still a scrawny kid. I hadn't gone through a growth phase phase yet. And he's like, "Are you sure you're up for this? You can't tell anybody about it." Like kids at school, because I was in high school. I didn't go very much, but I had a work schedule. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. Let's do it. So we open the door. There's a man in his 40s, completely naked with a gunshot wound to his head. And I'm looking at it and I'm like starting to freak out. Like, what in the hell did I just agree to? Well, that was the day that I become a funeral director apprentice. Wally owned funeral homes. And so he started teaching me at 16 years old how to be an entrepreneur, a real entrepreneur, a business owner. And so for the next 4 years, I embalmed bodies, I did autopsies, I did funerals, I drove new cars, I had new clothes, I wore suits, and it was phenomenal. It was the first time in my life I started building confidence. And people respected me, and I'd never had respect before. And that's when I got the entrepreneur bug. It's like, this is what I want to do. But he taught me something, Shawn, that stuck with me my whole life. And that is how much money you make is not as important as how much money you keep. And nobody cares about your money as much as you. Not your CPA, not your insurance agent, not your attorney, not your wife or husband or your family, you. But unfortunately, most people make the mistake of just turning their money over to someone else. They never learn the tax code. I hear people complain constantly. They hate paying taxes. And I'll go to them and say, it's voluntary. There is a system. If you apply the system that Congress created, the IRS enforces, if you just follow the rules of the game, you can win. But most people are playing the game of money and they don't know the rules. Imagine playing football and not knowing the rules. You catch the ball, you see all these huge dudes running at you, so you run the opposite direction. But that's what most people do with money. The other thing they do with money, Shawn, is they play offense. They only play offense. They play no defense, and they don't know the rules of the game. And I see it all the time, and I hear it all the time. I speak on stages all around the world. I just got back from Guatemala, down there teaching entrepreneurs how to reduce their taxes and protect their assets. And one of the guys, I hear this constantly. Well, I need a new CPA. I need an aggressive CPA or an accountant. And it's like, that's like saying I need a more aggressive referee at the football game. CPAs don't create tax laws. CPAs don't create tax strategies or programs. They're there to make sure you file your taxes on time, you complete the paperwork properly, and you follow the rules. They're the referee in this game. They are not there to coach you to beat the IRS. They didn't go to 4 years of tax law or tax programming school. They went to accounting school for 4 years to learn how to do accounting. That's why they're called a certified public accountant. And 90% of accountants don't file taxes. They work for big banks and Fortune 500 companies and insurance companies. They do accounting. It's the lower students, the A students and the B students go to work for banks and Fortune 500. The C students go into tax. The D students go work for the IRS. And so I got started at a young age being taught about money from my parents, what most people were taught. Money doesn't grow on trees.
Check.
Money doesn't buy happiness. And money's the root of all evil. Well, none of that's true. And I figured it out when I was a kid, and that's why I left home, because around 14, 15, I got old enough that I would just sneak out to go to school. And the beating stopped. He finally, after the state would show up so many times and take us away, he finally kind of gave up on us not going to school. And I learned that rich people weren't evil, that money could bring happiness. Because every once in a while, the teacher would let me leave with one of the rich kids' parents, and they'd let me go take a bath. They'd wash my clothes and they'd feed me. And so I figured out, money's not bad. Rich people aren't bad. It's my parents. They're limited. And I realized that my parents were wrong, but they did the best they could. They taught me based on their information, and they just chose not to learn it anymore. And there's an expiration date of what you can blame your parents on. And that expiration date is basically when you start driving a car. Once you can legally drive a car, you can't blame parents for anything. I said something the other day on social media, and I said that you can't predict the future, but you can invent your future. And so at 15 years old, I invented my future of being an entrepreneur. And I've done things along the way. I was a fireman, lived in Colorado as a fireman in the Denver metro area. I was a first responder at the Columbine high school shooting. I've saved, I don't know how many lives. And I left the fire department because I thought I could make a bigger impact by helping business owners. Instead of showing up on 911 calls, I wanted to get in front of it. So now for the last 19 years, I left in 2007. I started Fortress Financial Education, Credit Repair, Debt Settlement, and Tax Advisement Company 19 years ago. And now I help business owners protect their assets, create legacy plans, help them work with their insurance agents so they can do infinite banking and so they can use their business to fund their infinite banking and use other products and services to completely eliminate their personal taxes. And at the same time, protect all their assets in a way that when my clients come to me, they own a lot of stuff, they make a lot of money. And when I'm done, they own nothing, they control everything, and they make very little money. They have access to a tremendous amount of money. They just don't make any money, and therefore they don't pay taxes, just like the rich. The rich, you don't hear them ever complaining about the politicians going to tax the rich because they don't pay any tax. They don't pay a lot of income taxes. They pay a tremendous amount of payroll taxes and sales tax and property tax. And their companies pay tax, but they don't pay a lot of personal income tax because they just don't have a lot of income. So that's a little intro on me. Thanks for letting me flap my lips for a little bit here.
Sure, man. What an incredible story, origin story. Like I've heard some really interesting ones, some ones that, came from a lot of struggle, but that might top them. That might top all of them. So really impressive that you were able to find the right people to surround yourself with. And I think that's a huge aspect of getting to where you want to go is just find those people that have the things that you want and try and learn as much as you possibly can from them. I don't think enough people have mentors these days, or just people that they can lean on and plug into and learn from. So it's incredible that you were able to go from where you started to where you're at now. So I think one of the big things, a lot of people that listen to me, I had debt when I first was getting into the infinite banking space, student debt, some high credit card debt, but $60,000, not the most anybody's ever had, and definitely not the least. But you've helped a lot of people eliminate millions of dollars of consumer debt and tax debt. When you look at people's balance sheets, how do you distinguish between productive debt that can help them build, long-term wealth, and then toxic debt that I feel like is quietly destroying basically everybody's lives? Like what filters or rules of thumb do you kind of use and you want the listeners to maybe start using as well?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that question. I want to kind of go back on what you were talking about with mentors. I was very fortunate I had Wally to mentor me, and he wasn't perfect. I mean, the guy would lose his temper and break things and punch holes in walls and scream and cuss. And it was kind of cool in a way looking back because that's how Paul, my stepdad, was. So I knew how to like deal with it, and so I worked for him so long. But here's the thing, you don't have to have a mentor that physically, there's mentors with social media now. There wasn't social media in the 80s and 90s. And I think I believe I'm a mentor to hundreds of thousands of people on social media. I've never met them. I'll probably never meet them. I'll probably never talk to them. But your mentors can be people from either authors or social media. Just make sure you do some due diligence because there are a lot of people on social media. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's not real. So, but saving debt and figuring out what's good debt and bad debt. And it really comes down to what Robert Kiyosaki, he does the best. Good debt puts money in your pocket. Bad debt takes money out of your wallet. It's really what's the difference between debt and assets, liabilities and assets. Debt, a lot of people will say cash is king, right? You've heard that before. Cash is king.
Yeah.
Well, I've been in the credit world for 19 years, and I can tell you this. Cash may be king, but credit's the king maker. And if you want to be a king and not have cash, you use credit. You use credit to become a king and use credit to get cash from banks to finance assets that appreciate. See, the wealthy use debt to buy appreciating assets to offset inflation.
Mhm.
And they use other people's money to buy the assets, and they use other people's money to pay off the assets. So when I look at someone's finances, I look to see, is this debt paying them or taking money away? And it's okay to use credit and it's okay to use debt. Look, I've been on both sides. I've been poor. I've been very rich. I've had lots of debt, millions of dollars of debt that I filed bankruptcy on because I didn't know any better. And I've been a business owner my whole life since I was a teenager, really. And so business owners make decisions and we make moves that most people won't do. And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. Most of the time they don't. But here's how I look at debt is if it's recreation and you have to finance it to be able to buy it, you don't have time to recreate. So if you're buying a four-wheeler or a motorcycle and you have to finance it, you don't have cash to pay for it, you shouldn't be buying it. Now, I'm not saying you should pay cash. I'm getting ready to buy a new motorcycle. It's $40,000. I have the cash to buy it, but I'm not going to pay him 40 grand in cash. I'm going to go get a loan at 4% interest, maybe 5%, which I can make 20, 30% off of trades that I do and other investments. So I kind of look at debt as, can you make more money investing that than it's going to cost you? Is it tax deductible? I make everything tax deductible, including the motorcycle interest under the new big beautiful bill is going to be tax deductible. The interest is. So now instead of it being a 5% loan, really it's about a 3% loan. And 3%, if you can't make 3% on your savings account, I mean, all you got to do is open a damn bank account, an Apple bank account, and they'll pay you 4. So that's my opinion on debt debt is not bad. Debt can be used, and I think debt is the fastest way to becoming wealthy. I have a very good friend, and he's worth about $500 million. He's got a pretty popular podcast called The Ed Milet Show. And Ed and I have talked about this. Would be worth billions of dollars. Billions. He'd probably worth, who knows how many billions. But he uses no debt. He pays cash for his house. All of his houses are cash. All of his cars are cash. And it's not like a little $500,000 house. The island that he lives on, he paid cash. He's putting $100 million of cash into redoing this island and building a golf course. And I said, Ed, why don't you do debt? And he's like, man, I'm afraid I'll lose it. I can't pay it. I just can't do it. And I'm like, that's a limiting self-belief, man. And he's like, I know. And so here's what I realized, Shawn, is I used to try to convince people that debt can be good. And now maybe it's not. I mean, he has a emotional connection and he shuts down with debt. I don't. So I'm okay that I have house payment and car payments and soon to have a motorcycle payment. But I'm not paying with it with my money. Someone else is going to pay for it. So
Exactly.
there's your long answer.
You, my listeners will love this because you're hitting on so many things that we teach and preach when it comes to practicing the infinite banking concept. And one of those big things is other people's money. Like I don't want to use my money. I want to use other people's money. That's why it's there, so I can leverage it. That's what you're doing within your policy. I put all of my cash into this policy, and then I go leverage the insurance company's money for a much lower rate. And depends on what rates are at out in the market. Maybe I'll leverage the bank's money. Maybe I'll leverage the insurance company's money. But the decision is mine, and I'm the one that's in control. And so all those things that you're saying are tracking. And I get where Ed is coming from, where some people just have that mindset. Like some people really, really want to pay off their house. Is paying off your house,
Worst financial decision you'd ever make, but okay.
is paying off your house the most effective thing that you can do with the money?
Horrible idea.
Obviously, you think not. But some people will be like, I will just sleep better at night knowing that I took this 300 grand that I had and went and paid off my house. Okay, everybody's different.
Yep.
It obviously sounds like he could leverage quite a bit of capital from other people, but he just doesn't feel comfortable doing it. So I think that's where you got to, meet everybody where they're at. But I'm tracking with everything that you're saying. All right, you guys, quick interruption to the video. First things first, I wanted to make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. I greatly appreciate you watching my videos. So do me a favor. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and go smash that button and click that little bell just to make sure that you're getting alerted every time I put out new content. Number two is I got a lot of great content on my website. Go ahead and go check this out. There's all sorts of free resources on there that you could plug into and a bunch of other great information on the website. So be sure to head over to legacylifeandretirement.com and go check that out. All right, back to the video. So if you were sitting down with a family, how would you walk them through like, hey, I've got debt, but I also might want to be investing. Like I know there's a line, kind of like the house thing. I'm not going to go and pay off this 3% mortgage. If I have the cash, I would rather utilize that cash to make more money. How are you teaching people about that? The line from paying off debt to then also investing maybe at a simultaneous time?
Yeah, I believe that debt is good if managed properly. And I'm not the Dave Ramsey guy that you need to chase and pay off the debt. I'm also not the Robert Kiyosaki guy or the Grant Cardone guy, which is, Grant Cardone is lie, cheat, and steal your way to wealth and then overextend yourself. That's not what I do. What I like to do is sit down with them and say, look, what's your goals? And I'm not into paying interest. So instead of, you got a 30-year mortgage, great. If you want to pay it off early, that's not a good financial move because as soon as it's paid off, it's a huge target and someone's going to steal it from you. We live in a world that people are greedy. The lazier you are, the greedier you are, and the more you want to take from people who work their butt off to obtain wealth. And so when the house is paid off, that's really risky, especially when you live in a state and it's in your name and they can figure out who owns it very quickly. So what I like to do is show them ways to pay down debt quickly, to pay less interest, but without impacting cash flow. Because when you make that extra payment on the house, you can never get it back unless you sell the house or refinance the house. But if you leverage a line of credit and use the line of credit with your mortgage and you need the money and you make extra payments, you just pull it out with your line of credit and you get it out faster. And some people call it, velocity banking or whatever. Mm-hmm. But what I teach people to do with debt is you need to write it down first. Most clients that I've met with, and I've helped over 100,000 people. 100,000 people have successfully gone through my debt reduction, financial education, credit repair program in 19 years. Over 100,000 people. We have a 99.9% success rate. I have over 1,000 five-star reviews that we just started a year and a half ago on the review thing. But what I do is I find out how much debt do you have? And I will tell you this, Shawn, I've never had a single person in 19 years be able to tell me exactly how much debt they have when I first ask them. Very few people have a list. And so the first thing we do is we need to create a list of how much debt you have. And here's what happens with it. It's like, oh, I got $10,000 or I got $60,000 in debt. Well, then I owe my brother-in-law $500. Oh, I got this other credit card and now it's $65,000. They don't know because it's easier for us to live our life with our head in the dirt like an ostrich. Like we just don't want to know how much debt we have, what our bills are. We know it's a mess, but we don't want to face that mess. Mm-hmm. And it just adds more stress to your life. So the first thing is to write down how much debt you have, who the creditor is, how much you owe, what's the interest rate, and what's the payment. Those are the four things we need. Put it on a spreadsheet, a Google Sheet, or a piece of paper. Yep. And then you have the minimum payments on everything, and you pick the lowest balance, and you take all of the extra money towards the lowest balance. And then you repeat that process until all you have left is your mortgage.
I think people are going to really be relating to what you're saying here. This is exactly what we teach people. So I'm liking this. Carry on.
Snowball, avalanche, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
And then you need to invest it. And not all debt is bad. Again, I have a 3% mortgage. I do not pay one extra penny on the mortgage. And one of the things that I do differently than most financial advisors is I'm looking at the asset protection, legacy preservation, and tax side. So I said that I have the mortgage, but I don't own the house. The mortgage is in my name, but I don't own the house that I live in. Technically, I'm a renter. I'm no longer a homeowner.
Hmm.
I technically don't own anything other than clothing and an Apple Watch and a couple things that aren't worth very much money. The airplane, my Ferrari, the cars, the real estate, the apartments, companies own those.
Hmm.
I control those companies, but I don't own those companies, which means I don't have to pay personal income tax on any of the profit from those companies. Also means if someone sues me, they can't get any of those assets because they're not mine. They're no longer mine. And so one of the things that I like to do is instead of you having a mortgage or you owning the house, let's sell that house at a certain time and a certain amount of equity. You sell it to an LLC that you can control, and then you do a rental agreement and you get fair market rents, and you now become a renter and you rent from an LLC that you set up. That now makes 100% of the interest deductible, the maintenance on the house deductible, the electricity, the internet, the water, the sewer, the house cleaner, the remodeling. It's all tax deductible. So now if we can take our debt and push it into a corporate structure, make it all tax deductible, save 30-40% on our income tax, we now have 30 to 40% extra money that we're no longer giving to the IRS. We can now leverage that. We can put it into our structure. We can pay off debt. And now we're getting out of consumer debt very, very quickly. Build your credit profile at the same time. So now you can start obtaining corporate debt through business funding and business credit. And then you deploy that to buy appreciating assets with depreciating money.
Hmm.
Hopefully that was followable.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the right word, but
You're good. I'm tracking with exactly what you were saying. That's it's funny. I was just talking to a client earlier today, and she booked a call with me because she's like, I wanted to get your thoughts on paying off my car. So we kind of went through the process when we were talking about it, and she's like, it's $40,000. I have call it 5% interest rate on it, and kind of walked her through. I'm like, why do you want to pay it off? Would you rather? The thought process always, would I rather have this cash? Because she's an investor, she does different things.
yeah.
Would I rather have this cash liquid and flexible and ready to go make a move with, where I know I can go earn more than 5% with it? Or would I rather pay off this car and get rid of this payment and, of course, pay myself back that money that was being used to pay for that debt, but now I don't have access to my 40 grand. So we just kind of walk through those things. And again, it's just that flexibility. But
How much what's whole life paying right now with dividends and interest?
yeah, with dividends and interest, you're probably at that 5% range.
Put the 40 grand. So here's what I teach with paying off debt. Never pay off a car loan early. Paying off car loans will destroy your credit score. I have a good friend, his name is Brad Lee, also has a little podcast. 2019, Brad reached out to me to fix his credit. He had identity theft. And then after I removed the identity theft, he still was in the low 600s. And it's because he's a car guy. Every 6 months, he's buying a new car, new Ferrari or Lamborghini or Rolls, and then he pays it off the loan, and then he gets another one and trades it. And that is like, are you married, Shawn?
I sure am.
How long you been married?
Married 4 years.
Okay. You got any kids?
I do. I have a little 2-year-old boy.
Cool.
And my wife is pregnant.
Awesome. Yeah. So when you were dating and when things were starting to get serious and you were thinking about, is she the right one to marry? Did you ever ask her about previous relationships to kind of, see how things went? Was she married before? Did she always been single? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. If she would have came to you and said, hey, I've been married 7 times, but it was never my fault.
Little red flags going up for sure.
It's a little red flag, right?
Maybe a big red flag.
Yeah, maybe a big red flag. But it doesn't mean that you don't love her anymore. It doesn't mean you're not going to marry her, but there's a red flag there. And we got to dig a little bit deeper. Here's how it works with credit. When you apply for a 5-year loan from a bank, they want to loan money to everyone, but they can't loan money to everyone because not everyone will pay them. And so they have to pick the right person that the likelihood of them getting their money back is much higher. Mm-hmm. So your credit score is 300 to 850. And I do this all the time. I've been doing this now for 19 years. I'll stand on stage in front of hundreds of people, sometimes dozens, sometimes tens of thousands, and I'll say, what does that number mean? What does an 800 score mean to a bank versus a 600? And nobody knows other than it's good or it's bad. Here's what it means. If you put a period in between the zeros on 300, it'd be 30.0. And if you put a period between the 5 and the 0, it'd be 85.0. So now when you think of a credit score, you think of 30 to 85. What does that represent? That's 30% to 85% likelihood of you paying your bills on time over the next 2 years. That is all your credit score is. It is an algorithm that has predicted the future hundreds of billions of times over the last now 60 plus years, and it's predicted it accurately. What is the likelihood of Shawn King paying his bills on time over the next 2 years? You're a 780 credit score, there's a 78% chance. So now when a bank is looking at two people, they make the same amount of money, they work at the same company, they live on the same street, they're the same age. One has a 620 credit score, one has an 820 credit score. Which one are you going to loan to? And you can only loan to one.
The higher one, of course.
A higher one. Here's how it ties into what you were saying with the car. When you get a loan, the bank is considering they're going to loan you that money for 5 years, and you're going to pay them back. The last thing they want you to do is pay off that loan early. And when you pay off the loan early, they send a little notice over to FICO that the loan's paid off. And since FICO is paid by the bank and paid by the credit bureau to create scores, they get to influence how the score is calculated. And so the banks have convinced FICO, hey, if someone pays off the loan early, penalize them, because that just cost us money as a bank. And it goes back to your wife. So when you have multiple car loans, and they're 4-year loans, 5-year loans, 6-year loans, and you're paying them off a year, you're paying them off 2 years early, 3 years early, that's like multiple relationships that you canceled. You never went full term. Banks hate it when you pay off loans. But I don't want you to pay interest. So what's the alternative? So what I teach my students to do is, instead of paying $40,000 down and paying off the car, which will damage your credit long term, pay extra. So if you want to pay it down quickly, start paying $1,000 a month instead of $300 a month. Or if you really do have $40,000 and you just have to get this debt off of your books and you just don't want to make the payment, don't pay it off all the way. If she owed 40, have her pay $39,500. So she's got $500 remaining on the loan. It stays open. That $39,000 payment will be reported to the credit bureaus. The credit bureaus then will list it out the full term. So it'll look like she's made 4 years worth of payments. So for the next 4 years, it'll show paid as agreed, paid as agreed, paid as agreed. The balance will be much lower, so her score will go up there. Because she's getting 48 months or whatever it is of payments, paid as agreed, her score goes up. The bank's happy. She's happy because she's not having to pay interest on 40,000. She's paying interest on 500 or 100 or 50 or whatever she wants to pay it down to. And then let's say she pays it down to $500 and there's 4 years left. All right, well, you set a bill pay for $11 a month for the next 4 years and you forget about it. Put it on autopilot. Now, what's the disadvantage to this? One, you can't brag to your friends and say you're debt free. All right, well, that's an ego problem anyway. Two, you got to have full coverage insurance. Well, at $40,000 car, you probably should have full coverage. So this is what I've been doing now for 19 plus years. This is what I advise thousands and thousands of people, if not millions, because my social media has seen millions of views on this stuff. But that's how you handle debt. Pay it down quickly. If you can't live with the payment, or emotionally you don't want to have payments, then pay it down $500, pay $10 a month for the next 4 years and forget about it.
I'm glad you said that, because the advice that I gave her after we kind of came to this conclusion was, hey, if you think, do you believe that you can go take that 40 and you could earn 10% somewhere? She's like, yeah. I'm like, why not then just do that, keep your 40, make that spread, and take that extra cash that's coming from your 40 and use it to pay down the car.
Yeah,
Which
great.
Exactly what you said, outside of the paying a large lump sum to it.
Yeah, and that works too, because now maybe she's making 10% interest on or 10% gains. And so now she's got an extra 5% to throw towards that loan. And now, it'd be great if she could invest it and have it push out more cash that makes now the whole payment.
Yeah,
You know,
100%.
yeah.
Awesome. So from your vantage point as a credit expert, what do you think are the top three mistakes that you see people making with their personal credit that ends up costing them a lot of money over their lifetime? And then maybe what are some quick fixes that people could do, let's say in the next 30 days, to kind of just take them from where they're at to boosting their credit? Because I got to be honest, I've never paid attention that much to my credit, and it's been increasingly going up. I'm in the 820-ish range. Um, but it was never something that, again, I'm fairly young. I'll be 34 next month. It was just never something that I really focused on or was taught that
Yeah.
much about.
Yeah.
Um, but so what are some of those mistakes that people are making? And then what are some quick changes that people can make that you feel will have some sort of positive impact on them?
Yeah. The number one mistake that people make, whether you're a W-2 employee or a business owner, the number one mistake people make is they don't manage their credit cards the proper way. And when I say the proper way, I'm talking about the way that FICO wants you to manage them in order to get the top FICO score. I get people all the time, they're like, that makes no sense to do it like that. Well, that's because you're thinking of it through your eyes, not through FICO's eyes and not through the bank's eyes. Like when I say never pay off your car loan, they're like, that makes no sense. The bank's happy they got their money back. No, they're not. They want the interest. Now they got to go find someone else to loan the money to and take a risk that person's not going to pay them. So the number one mistake is not leveraging and using the credit cards properly. The first part of that is not having enough credit cards.
Okay.
In order to have great credit, you have to have at least 3 open credit cards.
Mm, okay.
Now, when I say in order to or never do this, there's always exceptions. If you're 78 years old and you have one credit card and you've had it for the last 50 years, then yeah, you can probably have an 800 credit score. But if you're 25 to 35 and you have one credit card, the likelihood of you having great credit is slim to none. So you need at least 3 open credit cards at all times.
Okay.
You need to use those credit cards every single month. Every month. And you need to spend between 1 and 5% of the credit limit on those cards every month. 80% of your credit score is how many credit cards you have, how often do you use the credit cards, and how much do you spend. If you do nothing but just manage your 3 credit cards properly and you pay your bills on time, you will always have excellent credit. So 1 to 5%. If you paid off your credit cards and you don't use them and you keep them at 0, you'll lose points. Eventually, they'll close the credit cards and then your credit score goes down. After 90 days of not using those credit cards, FICO ignores the card anyway, and they don't even exist in the eyes of FICO. So you got to use them. Number 2, you got to go between 1 and 5%. And why 1 to 5? How do all these rules come up? Well, remember when I said that the algorithm of FICO is to create the likelihood, predict the future of you paying your bills?
Mm-hmm.
Well, how did they do that? Well, with billions of files, literally billions of files, they've figured out that people who have 3 credit cards or more pay their bills on time more likely than someone who has 1 credit card or no credit cards. Okay? People that have 0 balances on their credit card are more likely to miss a payment than someone who has a 1% to 5% balance. It's literally that simple. It's not complicated. It's just, if you think about it through the eyes of people will say to me all the time, well, I thought if I maxed out the card and then paid it off that I get a higher credit score because I'm telling the bank that I can handle this. Well, you're telling the bank that, but the bank doesn't create the score. FICO creates the score. And FICO says anytime someone goes over 5%, the likelihood of them missing a payment over the next 2 years is astronomically higher.
Hmm.
When someone buys a new car, 90% of all repossessions happen in the first 6 months of buying a car. People say to me all the time, I went to a car dealership and they pulled my credit 50 times and my credit score dropped 150 points. Well, that's not why your score went down. Your score went down because you overutilized a credit card and you applied for a car loan and you were approved. So the likelihood of you missing a payment in the next 6 months is really high. So FICO just tanked your credit score until you hit that 6 month mark. Once you hit 6 months, those points will come back because the likelihood of you missing a payment now just went down. So the biggest mistake is not managing the credit cards properly, not having credit cards. And then I'd say that a big mistake that business owners make, because that's where I spend most of my time now, is in the tax reduction, asset protection side of my business. I have a team that deals with the credit stuff, and I do education, but I don't necessarily do the day-to-day working on credit anymore. I have a team of a bunch of people. But the biggest mistake entrepreneurs make is they use personal credit cards for business. They don't take the time to establish business credit or even try to get business credit. It is so easy, Shawn, to get business credit. It's so simple. It's so easy. It's just you need to know where to go. If you go into the bank at Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, or US Bank, it doesn't work very well. Those banks want to loan money, but they loan money to people who have business credit profiles. See, banks don't want to loan money to people who need money. You can't get insurance on your house when it's on fire. So you have to build the credit before you go into the bank. Well, the problem is, how do I get business credit and build business credit if I don't go to the bank first? Well, there's lots of vendors. There's thousands of vendors that will issue you credit and then report it to the credit bureaus. And in 3 months, you can have the equivalent of an 800 FICO score. In order to have an 800 FICO score personally, it's 20 years, literally 20 years with nothing wrong with your credit to be 800. So you're an 800 now because something happened along the way. Maybe you got a little boost from a parent, from an old credit card, but it takes a long, long time to get up high. So if you're in the 800s now, you're managing everything perfect. Otherwise, you would not be there.
I also don't have any debt outside of our mortgages.
Yeah, and you have credit cards that you pay off. You keep your credit cards low.
So yeah, question on that.
Yeah.
We rotate credit cards. I think we have 4 that we use, but we use them for all sorts of expenses. I guess I have 5 because I have a business credit card. But we use our credit cards as a replacement for the cash that we have, and then we pay them off on a monthly basis, and it's just this revolving window door that's earning us points and doing it. So how is that with paying, when you're paying off cards in this revolving door fashion? It doesn't seem to be hurting us.
It's not hurting you. It's not hurting you. The FICO rules changed in January. Okay. So now for folks that prior to January 1st and the Vantage and FICO lawsuit being over and the government now ending the FICO monopoly that they created, the government created it in 1996. They wouldn't allow any mortgage company to use anything other than FICO. And so FICO's had a 30-year run on a monopoly. Well, now there's Vantage and there's others. There's dozens of different scoring systems. Mm-hmm. So it's not just FICO. January 1st, something changed. And that is prior to January 1st, if you maxed out your credit card and then you paid it off the following month, you would get all those points back. It's 150 points. Now, if you max out your card and you pay it off, you get points over 2 years. So they take those 150 divided by 24 months and you get a little bit every month. If you're the person that maintained a balance for the last 2 years. So now the data is looking back 2 years. It's called trending data. So if you're the person that for the last 2 years has paid your credit cards off every month, then you're in the good bucket. So when you max out your card and you pay it off, you don't get penalized. If you were the consumer that maxed out the card, whether it's to get the 0% for 2 years or you just were over leveraged, and now you pay off the card, it's going to take 2 years for your scores to come back up. So the big mistake that business owners make is they use personal credit cards for business expenses. The IRS doesn't care, but FICO cares. And the problem with personal credit cards, the average personal credit limit on a card is $7,000. The average credit limit on a business credit card is $35,000. With business credit, it's the opposite of personal credit. The more you use that credit card, the higher your business credit score goes. Whereas with a personal credit, as soon as you hit 5%, your score starts coming down. So if you maxed out, if you had $1,000 personal credit card and you put $1,000 on it, you just lost 100 points. Where on business credit, Instead of being $1,000 credit limit, it's 5,000. If you max it out, no problem. None whatsoever. So that's a mistake they use. So you need to move over to business credit. Make sure it's a real business credit card. So I'm an ambassador with American Express. American Express has business cards and personal cards.
Mm-hmm.
Get the business platinum card or the business gold or the business whatever card you get. Just make sure it doesn't report to your personal. And this is how you can now separate your business credit from your personal credit. And then your business expenses don't impact your personal credit scores or your personal finances.
Good to know. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the stuff as you were transitioning into. I know you said you don't deal too much on the side of the credit stuff anymore for you personally, but I know you specialize in, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I know you specialize in corporate structuring and asset protection. So for a typical entrepreneur who owns a business like we were talking about, they have a home, maybe a few investments, kind of your average run-of-the-mill person. What are the key entity moves like LLCs, corporations, trusts that you feel like can help begin to separate their operating risk from maybe their personal wealth?
I want to make some people really pissed off.
Love it.
I want to make a lot of people upset. They're going to be angry with me. I am the messenger.
Sure, it won't be the first time.
I'm going to give you the facts. I'm not trying to sell you anything.
Okay.
So there is absolutely no difference in when it comes to taxes, income taxes. There's no difference between a sole proprietor, an LLC, a partnership, or an S corporation.
Okay.
Don't believe the lie that if you elect to be an S corp, you're going to save all of these income taxes. It's nonsense. Why do CPAs push it so much? It's because they get to charge you now for payroll. They get to charge you for quarterly reporting. They get to charge you for bookkeeping, and they get to charge you for a second tax return. Because as sole proprietor, you don't need an S corporation tax return. It's one tax return. It's your personal. What does an S corp save you on? It saves you on the 15.3% self-employment tax, which maxes out at $24,000. But there's no free lunch with the IRS. Because if you do S election, then you must take a reasonable salary.
Yep.
Now, 95% of business owners in America, 95% of businesses never gross more than $1 million. They're all small, medium, and sometimes barely making it businesses. Most businesses is really the business owner, he doesn't have a business. They have a job with overhead. That's really what they have. They got a $100,000 job with $300,000 of overhead, and they got to make 400 grand to make it. Not criticizing that. I'm just saying that's the fact.
Yeah.
Okay? So becoming an S corporation doesn't help you, because if you are the CEO, you tell me, Shawn, how many CEOs do you know that make 20 grand a year? Or 40 grand a year. So they're saying, hey, I'm the CEO. They sign their tax return to CEO. It's on their business card. It's on the website. You know, the whole alphabet soup.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first thing the IRS is going to look at, the very first thing they look at with your tax return is how much money did the company make and what was the payroll expenses. If you are an S corporation and you made $1 million and payroll's 20 grand, it's an automatic red flag audit. I'm not saying you're automatically getting audited, but there's a red flag that pops up. So S elections don't save you much. C corps by themselves is not a great idea there either. Here's another thing that's going to piss people off. LLCs do not protect your assets. In all 49 of the 50 states, there's only one state that the court systems recognize LLCs. One, and that's Texas. So if you don't live in Texas and you're not doing business in Texas and you have an LLC with you and your wife, you and your husband, you and your best friend, there is no asset protection to that whatsoever. Because if the LLC gets sued, they're going to name you in the lawsuit because you're the owner. If you get sued from a car accident, they're going to name the LLC in the lawsuit. So LLCs are not great for tax. They're not great for asset protection. S corps, they're better on the tax because of self-employment tax, but then you got to be making a lot of money to offset the reasonable salary. C corps are great for asset protection, horrible for tax. So what I do is I combine them all into one structure. A sole member LLC, a partnership LLC, an S corp LLC, and a C corp plus an irrevocable trust. Here's the thing people aren't going to like on the trust. Revocable trusts, which is what the majority of people
Mhm.
have no asset protection. They're invisible because you don't have to register them. But if you get sued, you have to disclose to the court that you have a revocable trust, and you have to disclose everything in the revocable trust. So this house that you paid off, you're like, oh, I'm going to put it in a trust and no one's going to know. Well, it'll list the trust on the Secretary of State's website or the clerk and recorder's website. But if you get sued, they're going to ask you to fill out financials. And if you don't put your house, they're going to say, hey, you didn't put down a house. Where's the house? Are you a renter? No, 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 I own the house. Why didn't you put it down here? Well, it's in my trust. Oh, what else is in your trust? Now you have to disclose it all. So there's the guys like Pace Morby and some of the other influencers out there like, oh, well, you just put your business in a trust. Put the trust at the top of your structure. Now the trust owns all of your businesses underneath, including your house. Well, March 24th, or I'm sorry, March 29th, 2024, Congress changed that little rule. As of January 1st, 2025, trusts now that own businesses and real estate underneath them now pay a flat fee of 37% gross tax. So if your business made $1 million, you now owe the IRS $370,000. And when you pulled that out and you put it in your personal pocket, you pay personal tax on it. So it's double taxation now on trust. Did not exist prior to January 1st, 2025. So that whole trust thing, put your business trust, house, it's all nonsense and garbage. And now it got blown up.
I'm surprised I have not heard more people talking about that. That sounds like a very big deal.
Here's why you haven't heard about it. It is not tax season. It's not tax filing yet. So the IRS is not required to notify businesses when the laws change.
Mhm.
Trust attorneys are not required to notify their clients. Oh, by the way, a trust that I charged you 50 grand to set up last year, it doesn't work anymore. So what's going to happen is they're going to file their taxes, and then the CPA is going to throw their yellow flag down, and the referee is going to run over to you and say, hey, they changed the laws. We now pay double taxation when the trust owns the business, and you now owe 370 grand.
Mm.
Then you're going to start hearing about it a lot, but it's not filing season yet. So we got a couple more months before you start hearing about it, but it's coming.
Man. So I feel like I could have a bunch of more questions for you. We're approaching an hour here. I definitely think I want to have you on again if you're open to it, because again, just that one point alone, I think is gonna concern a lot of people and make them realize, oh shit, maybe I need to be talking to somebody, talking
Yeah.
to somebody else. But I have one more question before we
Mhm.
wrap this up. So for the listener who has decent income but feels behind, maybe their credit isn't great, maybe they're carrying some high interest debt, they're exposed from, a lawsuit and tax standpoint. What are the first 2 or 3 actions that you would want them to take in the next 90 days to start turning things around?
Yeah. Number one is going to be write it down. Write down what all your debt is. Figure out how much money you actually make. That's the other thing. Very few people know how much money they actually make. They don't know. They're like, I don't know, $15 an hour or 55. So write down how much debt you have in those 4 columns. Write down how much money you make, and then create the plan to pay back the debt. And if you're not making enough money to pay the debt, then you need to figure out, what can I cut? But I can tell you, don't get too crazy on cutting. Don't be like, we're not going out to dinner anymore. We're selling the cars. We're going to live on rice and beans and rice and turn down the heater. None of that nonsense, because that's like starvation diet.
Mhm.
Yeah, it works for a little bit and then you gain it all back. So figure out, what is it in your life that you're spending all the money on? What can you cut? And if you can't cut enough out, it's so much easier to make more money than it is to
Yeah.
cut.
Yep.
And if you're a W-2 employee working 40 hours a week, there's another 40 hours in the week for you to be making money. And it's way easier to make more money than it is to cut. And then if you can go and figure out how to reduce your taxes to zero, you now have an extra 30-40% in your pocket to wipe out the debt. But you just got to start somewhere, and the starting is writing it down and figuring out where the problem is, and then stop digging the hole deeper and start climbing out.
Yeah, who was it? I was talking to another guest the other day, and they told me a quote, something about, "Hey, when you realize you're digging a hole, stop digging."
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, step out. Like, hey, you got to just stop digging. So I think that's one of the common things that we focus on is, hey, let's find ways to sure there's certain things maybe some people do need to be cutting that they're overdoing it on, but going and making more money using whatever skill set that you have to go out there and make some extra cash that you could put to work is extremely underrated. Like we don't want to live in that scarcity mindset. We want to live in that abundance mindset. And the idea is, hey, go do more, go provide more value, figure out how we can do that and make more money. And as long as you don't have Parkinson's law where sure you raise that income, but now you're also raising all your expenses. We just got to be careful with that to make sure that
Mhm.
we're addressing that. But man, I've been loving everything that you guys have been saying. I feel like it's exactly what I'm teaching and preaching for the most part to my people outside of some of the stuff that that I definitely don't know. But with that, if other people really related to this and felt strongly about the things that you were saying and want to hear more from you or just connect with you or whatever, can you give everybody the best places to follow you, find you, connect with you, all your resources? How do people
Yeah.
connect?
Well, my name is Rondi Lambeth, and you can find me on all social media platforms at Rondi Lambeth. That's RondiLambeth. A word of warning: if you find me on social media, make sure it's the verified account
Mm,
because there are a lot of people that take videos of me and pictures of me and then try to sell you Bitcoin and crypto and all kind of nonsense. So if you don't follow the blue check, you'll probably get ripped off. So just make sure it's the blue check marked or the verified. And if it's not verified, just know that I will never ask for money from you in my DMs. Never, ever, ever. I will never ask you for money unless you're on a Zoom call talking to me, and then you will pay me a small fortune. Sometimes
mm.
depends on how much money you owe the IRS because you either give it to them or you give it to me. And mine's a one-time fee versus a lifetime fee with them. So that's the first thing is Rondi Lambeth. Also, rondilambeth.com. You can sketch. I have a calendar link there, and you can learn more about me at rondilambeth.com. And then there's buttons to, if you need debt settlement or credit help or tax help or asset protection, you can do it there. And then once a month, I do a workshop where I show people step by step how to create the structure that has 5 entities in it instead of the one. And by doing that, you get asset protection, legacy preservation for 500 years, which is a tremendous amount of time, and reduces to completely eliminate your income taxes. So I teach people over a 3-day process how to do that. It's winningthetaxgame.com. So winningthetaxgame.com. There's a small fee, a couple bucks. 100% of the proceed goes to Tunnel to Towers. And sometimes I change it up and I'll make a wish this quarter or whatever. But 100% of the money that I collect, the $20 fee to join the Winning the Tax Game, goes to charity. Um, and so that way I'm not selling anything. I'm giving this information if you decide what you want to do with it. So winningthetaxgame.com or rondilambeth.com or anywhere on social media at Rondi Lambeth.
Awesome. And I know you have a podcast you do, right?
I do. I have a podcast. I started it in 2010. It's had a couple different names, but now it's called School of Wealth. It's been called School of Wealth now for 9 years.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to what I've been talking about here. How to maximize your credit, how to minimize your debt, and how to mitigate your taxes, and then multiply your assets.
Mm,
So those are the 4 things that we teach on the podcast.
like the sound of that. Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on, Rondi, and I think it's been extremely insightful. I look forward to chatting with you more and tuning in personally to your podcast and everything. But I felt like I got a ton of value from the things that you were saying today. So I really appreciate you taking the time, man.
Great to be here.
Awesome, man. All right, guys. Catch you next time. All right, that was it. I hope you guys really enjoyed that one. I know I did. Definitely one of my favorite guests yet. I'm really looking forward to connecting with Rondi in the future and just having him pour into me, learning everything I can from him. I hope you guys took a lot from that episode. Rondi, thank you so much for joining me. Do me a favor, guys. All the links for his social media, his website, everything else you need are down in the description below. Go check him out. Be sure if you enjoyed this podcast to like and leave a review down below. You know it helps your boy out. As always, guys, the information is free, but the knowledge is priceless. I'll catch you on the next episode.
Flow is key,
Peace.
best belief will teach you the way. Invest in your future, there's no time like today. Tune in, rise up, elevate your game. Financial freedom is possible, and it's yours to claim. Cash flow is key, best belief will teach you the way. Invest in your future, there's no time like today. Tune in, rise up, elevate your game. Financial freedom is possible, and it's yours to claim. Oh, oh. Welcome to the Cash Flow Chronicles, where we're redefining wealth and overcoming obstacles. Infinite banking, yeah, we control our cash. We put our money to work, so we know it's gonna last. Cash flow is key, best belief will teach you the way. Invest in your future, there's no time like today. Tune in, rise up, elevate your game. Financial freedom is possible, and it's yours to claim.